Welcome to Sky Women. I'm your host, Dr. Carolyn Moyers, a wife, mom, and board-certified OB-GYN. This is a place to educate, empower, and inspire. Join us each week as we share the power of women's stories. Real women, real stories, real inspiration. Put on your stretchy pants. Let's get going. Welcome, Sky community. Welcome back to another episode of Sky Women. I'm so happy that you're joining us today. Today, my special guest is student Dr. Ashley Steele. Ashley is a student at the University of North Texas Health Science Center, Texas College of Osteopathic Medicine, where she is an aspiring physician and wanting to be an OB. And so she is on rotation with me this month, and she's going to help us out with our podcast for the next couple of weeks. So welcome, Ashley.
Hi, it's so nice to be here today. I'm really excited to be a part of these podcasts for the next month.
Yes.
And I'm excited just to talk a little bit more about a couple of things that I think are pretty interesting.
Awesome. Cool. Awesome. Yeah. So it's so fun to have a student who is so eager to learn all of the things and discuss relevant topics and to teach me how to turn off my notifications on my laptop. I mean, it's the small things that just delight me. So Ashley, just tell us a little bit about you.
So I am a third-year student at the Texas College of Osteopathic Medicine here in Fort Worth. I was actually born in Vietnam, and then I came to America when I was about 2 years old. Grew up in the Arlington, Mansfield, DFW area before I went to college in Waco at Baylor. Mm-hmm. After that, I worked full-time for 2 years at Baylor Scott & White in Temple, Texas as a transplant tech, and that's kind of where I was like, there's more to life. I want to go back to school. Working is fun, but man, something's missing. And that's when I decided to go back to school, and I did my master's program at UNT, HSC, also at the same campus.
So what is your master's in?
It's the Master's in Medical Science program.
Okay.
But I actually did the 2-year full-on master's track, and I did a research dissertation as well.
Okay. Fascinating.
Yeah. So I did all that and then started up med school in 2020, the big year of COVID. Starting off with online med school was definitely interesting.
I'm sure. What a journey. Yeah.
So it's nice now to be in person, seeing people and not just seeing little thumbnails of everyone's pictures on Zoom.
Okay. So you're excited to be on rotations. Okay. And so what I love about Ashley also is that she's done a really great job of developing her interest outside of medicine. So she's a yoga teacher and she likes to take pictures, like an amateur photographer.
I do photography. Yeah. That was something I started when I was working full time. I was interested in pursuing that as maybe like a hobby or a side business. And then it just kind of grew. I have a lot of things that I'm interested in. And I'm a big proponent of, if you're interested in it, now's the best time to learn, because life only ever gets busier from here. So I might as well just try now. And if I don't like it, I'm like, well, I tried it and I didn't like it, so it's fine.
Yeah. Amazing. Okay. And you and your husband also love to rock climb together?
Yeah, we rock climb together. I started rock climbing in also 2020, of course, a couple of months right before COVID hit. So that was a definitely fun setback for us. But we go rock climbing at the Summit gyms here in town, all throughout DFW, and we do some outdoor climbing as well. Nice. So we're big boulderers for those who are into the climbing community. We're not much into lead climbing or trad climbing. We're definitely the boulder folks, the boulder bros.
Okay. I have no idea what that means. That's great. Okay. So today we are talking about, why don't you introduce the topic?
Yeah. So today we're going to talk a little bit about feminine hygiene, and we're going to focus on different period products. What does it all mean when we talk about organic products versus disposable products and reusable products? How does this impact our environment? And what can we do to shape our decisions in picking the different products out there? Because, when you walk down that aisle at Target,
it's overwhelming.
It's just so many, There's different.
Do brands. I need wings? Do I need scents? All of the questions,
and even when we think we know something, there's always a new product coming out. And then you're like, ooh, this is new and shiny. I kind of want to buy it. Is it worth it?
Right. And it's easy to get taken in by the marketing, right? But this is something that we're using for our personal hygiene to help, with menstrual hygiene. And so I think it's really important that we know what we're looking for, what we should be looking for, and why we're making these decisions, and be a little more conscious about it. So
sure.
Yeah. So let's talk about periods in general first, right? So the average age of girls starting their period is 12 to 13, earlier in some cultures and even earlier in America today. We see this, sometimes even 10 and 11. So, and cycles typically are around 28 days, and they can vary between 21 to 45 days. And then let's talk about how to track our period. Can you explain how to track a period?
So the nice thing about living in today's age is that there's a lot of period tracking apps out there. So if you're not a big fan of pen and paper, we have our mobile phones that you can track apps on.
Yeah.
And the best way to track your period is to actually record or mark in your app tracker the first day of when you actually start your menstrual cycle. And then you should log every day after that you were continuing your cycle until the end of that. It's best to kind of do it the first. So I do track my periods just because I like to see if I'm regular or not regular. And if in that morning I notice, that's usually when I'll track it right then and there, because otherwise I'll forget.
Right.
And then you kind of have to backtrack.
Right. And interestingly, we're pretty lousy at, that recall.
Yeah.
So it's like, I don't know, did I? I'm not sure. Yeah. When was my last cycle? Was it 4th of July? I don't know. So I think it is really helpful to report it, whether you're putting it on your calendar on your phone, or you're writing it down in a journal, or you're putting it on, the family calendar, like whatever you choose to do, or there's tons of apps to use to help track it. So, okay, so that you can know when to predict, because if you cannot predict your cycle, you might find yourself in some difficult situations where you're not prepared and you don't have period products. And if you're having irregular cycles outside of these parameters, we didn't even mention, you typically bleed anywhere from 2 to 7 days. If you're bleeding consistently more than 7 days, or you're having very irregular cycles, you should seek a physician to talk about that.
Yeah. And then another thing that is that, like, on average, most women will lose between 30 to 60 mils. And I know that sounds like a lot, but that's really about 3 to 4 tablespoons. So not the little teaspoon, but like the bigger tablespoon. And that's over the course of your menstrual cycle.
Your entire period. But sometimes we feel like we're bleeding so much.
Yes. Yeah. And I think that has to do with a lot with using tampons or different absorbency products that maybe are a little too much for what we actually need, or too little for what we actually need. So it is variable.
Okay, so Ashley's going to walk us through the different period products, and she's very passionate about this, and she's done her research. So listen up.
So we're going to start off talking about the different disposable options, just because I think these are the options that most people are most familiar with. And these are things that include pads and mostly tampons. So they're really the two big disposable options. Right. So with pads, we know that they're disposable. They do come in different sizes, different absorbencies. So there are small ones. You have panty liners for those who have just maybe a few days of spotting. There are overnight ones. You have the ones with wings, without wings, so many different options, right?
Yeah.
So nice pros about this is that there are the different sizes and absorbencies. So you can really tailor the products you use
according to your flow for the day.
Exactly. Yeah. And this is also, these products are good for people who prefer not to use products that you have to manually insert or insert internally. So whether that's due to cultural differences or personal beliefs, things like that.
Or just difficulty inserting a tampon, like vaginismus,
Some cons about this, though, is that because they are disposable, and this is something you guys are going to hear me talk a lot about, because this is something I personally am passionate about, is that the disposable products create a lot of environmental waste. I'll talk about that a little bit more, but every year there's about 12 billion pads that go into the U.S. landfill, just from the USA alone.
Yeah.
So that's quite a bit. They can also be less discreet because typically a lot of the pads are wrapped in, a plastic liner or some type of packaging. And I think we've all been there before, where you're fumbling around when you're young and you're just like, I'm so embarrassed. Please.
Right. It's like open a bag of potato chips. There's no quiet way to do it.
Yeah. They can't really be worn when you're swimming just because of the absorbency. It's, you can, I guess, if you want to, but it's not going to be discreet and it's not going to be a pleasant time.
No, we're in a diaper in the pool.
Exactly. Yeah. And then they really should only be worn for about 4 to 8 hours. It's not really recommended to wear longer than that, just because, we all sweat. Sweat is a normal human process. Things accumulate down there, and it can just lead to a nice, happy environmental growth area for bacteria.
Well, right. And your flow is really going to dictate that, right? So if your pad's full, of course, you're going to change it. If it's a lighter flow and you're wearing a heavier pad and you just leave it on, well, sweat plus blood and bacteria, it's just going to be a petri dish and get quite odorous. So yeah, changing regularly is definitely recommended.
Mm-hmm. And then with pads, there's always still the chance of leaking, especially, if you're a tosser and turner in the night, that can be a problem. And then it causes staining of the clothes, staining of your sheets.
Right.
So it's not without its cons, or its disadvantages.
Totally.
So with tampons, this is a product that you do insert internally. For most of us, I think we're all familiar that it's disposable. It's a one-time use.
Right.
You put it in, you take it out. The nice thing about this is that there are different absorbencies, different sizes. So, you have your light, your heavy, your regular. And another disadvantage of this is that because it's disposable, it adds to that environmental waste. There's about 8 billion tampons that are thrown away every year. So, it's actually more than that. That's just in the US alone. So that's a ton of waste that we're contributing to our landfill.
Right.
And in America, this is something that's really interesting, is that Americans prefer tampons with the plastic applicators. I think we all know what we're talking about, the telescoping plastic one. And that plastic doesn't really break down. In the process of making those applicators, not only are we producing microplastics that leaks into our oceans, our drinking water takes billions of years to break down, but all the plastic applicators also accumulate. And then they're there for a long time. You can buy tampons with cardboard applicators, and those are biodegradable, those are recyclable. And you can also buy tampons without an applicator, which is actually what Europeans prefer. So that was something really interesting I found out. And it just had to do with who developed the tampon in our respective nations.
Interesting.
Yeah. So the tampon was developed in America with the applicator, whereas tampons in Germany were developed without. So almost everywhere in Europe except the United Kingdom, tampons without applicators outsell all the tampons with applicators.
Fascinating.
Yeah. But in the US, 80% of women prefer a plastic applicator.
Well, I remember when I was a little girl and I found tampons under my mom's sink and they did not have applicators.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the applicators started to be sold in America in the 70s.
Okay.
That's when they started being
fascinating.
So they're gaining a little bit more traction, I would say, in communities that are focused on reducing your carbon footprint and your waste, but it's still contributing with the cotton, waste that gets added.
Okay, so let's talk about pros and cons of tampon use.
Yeah, so one of the pros about tampons is that they're more discreet. You can wear them when you're swimming. A lot of people prefer to wear them if you're involved in high intensity sports, just because a pad can sometimes be bulky or a little uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And then there is a risk of having toxic shock syndrome. And for those of you who don't know, toxic shock syndrome basically happens when a material like tampons or other packaging materials, cotton, things like that, is left in an environment like the vagina over time. And basically different bacteria can create this toxin that then can damage your body and your organs. And that's what toxic shock syndrome is.
Now, there's a lot of buzz around toxic shock syndrome, right? But I literally have never seen a case of toxic shock syndrome. And I've been an OB-GYN since 2006 when I started residency. And if you ask any ER doctor as well, there's always the worry for it. But how often do we see it? Hardly ever. Yeah. And if you look at the incidence, it's like 0.1 to 3.4 per 100,000 US women. So it's quite rare. But what hygiene should we be aware of when we're using tampons to help avoid any type of infection?
So the big thing is to remember to remove and replace the product every 8 hours is the absolute max that's recommended.
Right.
But of course, it depends on your flow. If you have a heavier flow, you may find that you'll need to replace the tampon more frequently, just so that way you're not leaking into your clothes, your panties, things like that. But really 8 hours is what a lot of studies and physicians recommend.
Right. So pads or tampons, you're going to need to be changing them every 4 to 8 hours.
So I know right now there's the big buzz, right, on organic products and organic cotton, organic tampons.
And if it says organic, it must be better. We should buy it, right?
Well, that's the thing, though. So I know that that's automatically when we see the word organic, whether we're buying food or goods clothing, you hear organic cotton, you're like, okay, 100% better.
Right.
We automatically assume that it's more environmentally friendly. And honestly, this is just to show how good the marketing has been for the term organic. Because really in America, organic just means that the product was made without the use of pesticides.
Right.
So in that sense, yes, it is better for the environment because, you know, when you use pesticides every time it rains, it causes a lot of that pesticide to wash into our groundwater, rivers, things like that. And then not only does it bioaccumulate in those water sources, it accumulates in, you know, the fish that swim in it, and then all the birds that eat the fish, all the other animals that eat those prey, and then that bioaccumulation, you know, just gets worse and worse.
Right.
So in that sense, it is better for the environment, but otherwise, you're still growing cotton. You know, the cotton still has to be processed. It's not like we can just use the raw cotton as is.
Right.
It's still getting bleached in the process.
Okay.
Getting processed. And unfortunately, there is no set standard for how the cotton is processed, even like with organic products.
Okay. So not all organics are created equal.
Yes.
And how do we know even what standards they're being held to call themselves organic?
Exactly. So a lot of brands will say that they use like less chemicals, but what chemicals do they use? Or they'll say that our products are less harsh, but it's like, what do you mean by less harsh, right? That can be a very subjective term. If I'm like, oh, you're being harsh to me, this is less harsh, right? There's not really a standard definition on what harsh is.
Right. Okay.
And so really big benefit of organic is that you do know that your cotton is being grown without pesticides, right? And so if that is something that is a concern to you, that's a great thing to know about. And then usually with a lot of the companies that are producing organic tampons, they do focus a little bit more on being environmentally conscious.
Right.
Not all of them. So it really is a personal preference.
Okay.
The big downside, in my opinion, is that it's still contributing to the cotton waste, right?
Okay.
All of that landfill waste that it just takes forever. Even if it says it's biodegradable, that biodegradable means it will eventually break down.
Right.
It won't last forever.
Right.
But it's not like it magically breaks down in like a month.
Right.
And then the cost can be really inhibitive for women who are in underserved communities or women who may not necessarily have the means to afford, you know, a $9 box of 18 tampons.
Wow.
Which is the average cost.
Okay. So what's the average cost of non-organic versus organic tampons?
So to put that in perspective, non-organic tampons with the plastic applicator are typically about $8 for 34 counts. And then if you wanted to get the cardboard applicators, which I know some people are like, oh, it's a little less uncomfortable, but they're biodegradable, a box of 54 count is $8.
Okay.
And then to put that in perspective with the organic cotton, you know, a box of 34 count is going to cost you twice as much at $18 or $19.
Okay.
And there are some cheaper organic brands out there. So like Cora Organic is another brand that they focus on being a little bit more affordable. It's $10 for a box of 32, but the reviews are awful.
Oh, and why do we think that is?
A lot of people complain that it's just not comfortable. They can feel it when they're wearing it. The absorbency is not as great. Apparently the string is a bit more absorbent than the actual tampon. And so they're like,
that's not good.
Yeah. So, you know, it's not without its downsides.
Okay. But overall, like for tampons, the benefit would be you can go swimming, you can do your sport activities and, you know, not worry as much about leakage as long as you're changing. Or if you have a heavy blow, you could always wear a pad on that day too for backup, right?
And then it's just generally for most women a lot more comfortable than wearing a pad. You know, you don't have to worry about buying the right underwear for the pad to fit in. Or, you know, whether it'll show through your leggings or your tights or things like that.
Right.
So it is just a little bit more comfortable. And it's also especially in the Texas summer with the heat.
Yes.
It definitely helps reduce sweat in that area.
Okay.
So all that to say, that's really like the big overview of the different disposable products we have. The nice thing is now that there is a big movement to become more environmentally friendly of reducing our carbon footprint, reducing waste. So there's a lot of reusable options out there now. There are reusable pads. These work just like regular disposables, except they're made of usually 100% cotton. And so it works the same way. You put the reusable pad within your underwear or whatever garments you're wearing. When it gets full, you just take it out, you wash it, you let it dry, you put a new one in.
Okay, so I have a question about that.
Yeah.
So does it have a sticky nature to it or Velcro to it? Like how does it actually stay placed?
So different ones have different options. The ones with wings typically have like a button clasp that will go underneath.
Okay.
And that's usually how most of them work. Some of them have some Velcro options, but then you kind of have to like Velcro it to your panties. Some people don't like that, especially if you have like really cute ones that you like to wear for whatever, you know. And
you
so
have designated period panties.
Exactly. But usually they have a clasping mechanism.
Okay.
So kind of like if you guys have ever worn like a bodysuit, it's the same little buttons.
Okay. Fair enough.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But if you're washing it, like you just throw it in with the rest of your laundry, do you rinse it out in the sink first?
You're supposed to rinse it out in the sink first, and then you can throw it in with the rest of your laundry.
Interesting. Okay.
So those pads typically last about 3 to 5 years, and they can be a little cost prohibitive up front just because one pad will cost $20 to $30, and it's not like you're going to use one pad during your cycle.
Right. You're going to need multiple pads.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And they do have like reusable pads with different absorbencies. They have ones for heavy flow, light flow, different things like that. But again, you're still going to have to buy up front,
Right. And you're going to have to change them regularly throughout the day, just like you do
a regular pad, a disposable pad.
Yeah.
Yep. There's also period panties. I think this is another big trend that we're hearing about.
Trend, yes.
And these basically take one step out from having to change the pad all the time, in that the underwear is built with
the pad.
Yeah, with the pad in line. It's usually cotton, and it helps absorb the blood, prevent staining on your clothes, all that good stuff. The big advantage is that it's another great option for people who are interested or have difficulty, or if it's painful to insert products in. There's a lot of different brands out there now, so the cost isn't as bad, but on average, they still do cost about $25 to $35 a pair.
Right. So up front, it feels expensive, right? If you look at, I can just buy a box of tampons for $8.
Yeah.
But you're not having to rebuy these for several years.
Exactly.
Yeah. And you're not creating waste. So that is interesting. However, I will say that I would love to see these in stores so that you can actually try on, because I like to try things that I endorse, right? So full disclosure, I do not have a period anymore, and I love not having a period. Thank you, Marina IUD. But you only need a period if you're having babies or wanting to have babies. So I had not used them, but I thought, okay, I'm going to try this out and just see. And the brand that I bought just, off of Amazon was not very comfortable, like the way it cut on my leg. And then I was going camping with the kids, and I had, just my leggings on. Yeah. And it really created a horrible panty line that my husband was like, I don't know if that's appropriate.
That is one of the downsides, is that just for coverage wise, the period panties are going to be a little bit more of, grandma style, as we like to call them. Yeah. There are brands now, like Aerie is making, they're updating their collection to include period panties, and they have a couple of like cheeky options, a couple of different ones like that. But it's still just for coverage sake. You're typically not going to find like a thong period panty.
Yeah, right. Well, I'm just saying even the fabric was a lot thicker, so that it just really showed if you're wearing leggings or something. So, I mean, if you're going to wear them, I think it's better for a jean day.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And that can be hard if you're somebody who prefers wearing dresses in the summer or different types of materials.
I probably could work with a flowy dress, right? Just like nothing form-fitting when you're got your period panties on.
And then the last one, I'm a little biased, so I'll say that. Period cups. I absolutely love menstrual cups.
Okay, I'm so glad that you're talking about this and that you're passionate about this, because anytime anybody asks me, it's not anything that was ever introduced to me. Of course, it's no gen. I'm aware that period cups exist, that you can use a menstrual cup if you want. This is how we use it. But it's typically, in my mind, I envision it just being incredibly messy. Yeah. And it was nothing that was ever introduced to me as a young person having menses. So let's talk.
So what the menstrual cup is, for anybody who's not familiar, it's a bell-shaped looking device with typically a little stem at the bottom. And that stem is to help you remove, it acts like a tampon string. That stem helps you to remove the device whenever you need to empty the cup. It works kind of like a tampon in that you insert it into your vagina, and then instead of absorbing all the blood, it just collects it into the cup.
Now, when you insert it in the vagina, okay, so I always tell patients, you're going to spread the labia and you're going to compress the cup and insert it all the way up, because essentially we want the cervix to sit just inside the cup.
Yeah, you can. And the nice thing is now that the menstrual cups are getting more popular, they have different sizes. So they have ones for people who may have like lower riding cervixes. So they have short cups. So that way it's a one size fit all anymore, which is great. And then for me personally, when I insert, I like to fold the cup up into halves. It's easier to fit for me personally. And then that way, as it naturally unfolds, it creates the suction. And I don't have to worry about is it in the right spot? Did it fit? And then it's just a smooth process. It is a learning curve. That was the one I would say disadvantage, in that a lot of people are like, oh, this is a weird looking thing. I don't know how I feel about this. But I remember, when I made the switch from pads to tampons, there was a bit of a learning curve with that too. And I think it's just like, it was so long ago for a lot of us that we're like, there really wasn't one, but in reality, it took a couple tries.
Yeah.
At least for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
The great thing with the menstrual cups, though, is that they can be worn for up to 12 hours at a time.
Oh, so I'm envisioning during the school day, no girl is going to want to have to deal with changing out her menstrual cup or cleaning that menstrual cup in the middle of the day. And how do you do that? You're going to have to go to the sink and wash your hands, wash your menstrual cup. I just imagine that being so cumbersome. So the fact that you can wear it for a 12-hour period is really nice because it can really get you from sunup to sundown.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's really great for, if you're a working mom too, or anybody who's working, if you take call. That was a big reason that I switched to them was with my work schedule when I was at the hospital. Some days I'm like, I have call, I have this thing going on. I'm going to be here for forever. I'm not going to have a chance to run to the bathroom in the middle of this.
Right.
And so it was nice to know that I had a product that I could safely keep inside for 12 hours.
Right.
And for a lot of people, that will typically last you from the time that you get up until the time that you can make it home to clean it out, which is great.
Yeah, that is. Okay. And so how much does it actually absorb?
So it doesn't absorb any. The blood just collects inside the cup.
How much does it hold?
So like a Diva cup, it really depends on the product and the size, but a Diva cup, which is one of the largest ones, holds the equivalent of 4 super tampons in the one cup.
Okay.
So that is quite a bit.
So for a heavy flow day,
so for a heavy flow
perfect. Okay.
Yeah, and even for the heaviest flow day, it'll be rare that the Diva cup is even full.
Okay.
Usually, on average, for most women, it gets maybe half, like a quarter to a half full. And then, of course, there are smaller options now for people who have lighter flows or maybe have a lower riding cervix and a smaller cup.
Okay.
So that's another cool thing. And these can be a little cost prohibitive up front because a typical cup is $20 to $30. But the nice thing is, I know a lot of you guys are like, well, that's the same price as period panty. But with the cup, you don't need multiple. You just need one.
You just need one and you wash it out.
Yeah. And the cups are made with a silicone grade, medical grade silicone, or for those who have silicone allergies, they have alternatives. So polymer and antimer, different types, which is super great for those if you have allergies or if you're sensitive to silicone, things like that.
Right.
And typically most medical grade silicone lasts 25 years. That's not quite the case with the menstrual cup. They say that on average, you can keep one or you can use one for 5 to 10 years.
Okay.
Although some women prefer to replace it every 3.
Okay.
And that really depends on how you're cleaning it after every use, whether you're cleaning it with the correct soap or wash or whatever, how you're storing it, and then just really kind of based on your flow too.
Okay. So for us who may not have been exposed to the menstrual cup, let's talk about that. What does it look like taking it out? How do we need to wash it? And how do we need to store it when we're done with our cycle?
So the number one thing to remember is always wash your hands before putting the product in or taking the cup out. But typically when you insert the cup, there's a couple of different options that you can do. You just want to make sure that it makes this little suction vacuum seal. And it's not like you're just going to feel some crazy thing going on there. It seriously goes away. It's super comfortable. I don't feel it when I have it inside. But then when I'm ready to remove it, again, wash your hands, and you want to kind of make a pinching sensation with your fingers. So I take my index and my middle finger with my thumb, and I'll go on in and I'll pinch the bottom of the cup right around the stem. And that helps to break that seal so that I can remove the cup a little easier.
I see.
And I'm usually doing this, I'm already sitting at the toilet, peeing or whatever. And so it's super easy to just dump the cup out right there.
Okay.
And then if you need to wash it, at my house, my sink is a little further away from the toilet. I just wrap the cup in some TP real quick and then just go rinse it out. So that way I'm not dripping anything on the floor.
Right. Okay. So you just dump the blood in the toilet, flush, put it in some toilet paper, go clean it out in the sink. Yep. Do you need to wash it with soap?
Not in between uses. Water is great. Typically, you'll want to wash with soap, or some of the products have their own brand of cleansers that they sell. I just use regular soap. I haven't had
at the end of your use. So you're done with your cycle and you're going to wash it with soap and you're going to put it away.
Yep. I let it air dry. That's the nice big thing. And then just put it away in a little cotton pouch or a little bag, and then put it in your cupboard or wherever else you can put your products typically. And that's it.
So we have a menstrual cup that we demonstrate in our girlology class, which we have a girlology class coming up at the end of the month on August 24th for any of your young girls aged 12 years old, learning all about me and anything that's going on with puberty. And so we always demonstrate that menstrual cup as well, just so that they're aware that this is an option.
Yeah. And I know that it sounds a bit more expensive up front, especially when you're like, oh, this is $20 for this one or $30.
It's one device for all your periods.
Yeah. And to put that in perspective, if you're buying a box of tampons, let's just say like every other month, right? That's about $50 a year. If you're buying a box of tampons every month, that's about $100 a year. Typically, a woman's reproductive lifespan is about 40 years. So from the time that you're starting your period to the time you have your last one.
Yeah.
If you're buying tampons, that's anywhere from $2,000 to $4,000 being spent on tampons in your lifetime. Versus if you're buying a menstrual cup, and even if you're replacing it every 5 years, that's $300, $320 over that 4-year lifespan.
Right.
So it's quite a bit of money, that you're saving in the long run. And not only that, because you're using the menstrual cup, you're not contributing, to all of that cotton waste that's going in, all the plastic waste. Because when you look at pads, they have all the plastic liner, the underside is sticky. That's plastic that doesn't break down. With tampons, you have the plastic applicator, you have the little plastic pouch that it comes in. It's all individually wrapped and packaged. And all of those things take a long time to break down.
Right.
Yeah. So those are a couple of the different options we have. In addition to this, something else that we often have questions about or we hear about is, do I need to douche? Do I need to use?
Say no to douche, ladies.
Yes, please. We have the talk about pH balance soaps, different types of cleansers, should I use scented, non-scented, all those things. And so I really recommend that you guys tune into our next episode where we're going to dive a little bit deeper into what does it mean when you're buying a pH cleanser? What is a normal or a good feminine wash routine look like, right? Because I know that's something that we probably don't all discuss with our friends.
No. So, this was actually requested by a patient. She was like, please do an episode on how to wash your lady parts, because she was washing up in the vagina. The vagina is a self-cleaning oven. So we're going to leave her alone. Let her be. Okay, so tune in next week. Until next week, be well.
All right, Sky community, thank you for listening to another episode. This episode was sponsored by Sky Women's Health. As a reminder, we're in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and we help relieve back pain and pelvic pain in pregnancy and beyond. If you are pregnant and having pain and you feel like you have no reliable way to relieve it, look us up at skywomenshealth.com, request an appointment, and we'll call to get you scheduled. As a board-certified OB-GYN with a neuromusculoskeletal medicine fellowship, I help you realign with hands-on drug-free treatment and relieve pain on the spot without medication. We'll help you maintain these results through your pregnancy and postpartum period. Every pregnant person deserves this, and we are so excited to serve you. You can find us on our website, as mentioned, or on social at Sky Women's Health, or you can call the office at 817-915-9803. That's it for today. Until next week, be well.